Welcome to Telly Talk, where we talk about what's on the telly. By that I mean we talk about what's on our minds, because we're Telly. Today, I am a knight. I am Sir Knight. Sir Knight Soul.
I am Sir Tyler.
Not a knight. You're my squire.
I am Soul's Squire.
Do you want to know something funny about this movie?
Potentially.
This is the movie that I was introduced to Barry Keoghan.
Oh my god.
And when he started getting popular, I was like, "Oh my god, it's that one guy. That's the guy from the movie, The Green Knight." I was like, "That's that one, the little squire."
That's
Boy.
my new favorite fact about you, actually.
And I was like, "Oh, that guy. He's like the little bitch from the Green Knight movie."
The little bitch. Oh my god.
I mean, he is a little bitch.
Yeah. No, he really is.
Well, welcome to the episode. We're talking about the movie The Green Knight, which is a movie in my movie month because I love this movie. Not for the plot, not for the story, but just for the vibes and the aesthetic and the colors and the props and the costumes. Everything except for the actual story itself. The story itself sucks, and we'll get into that. But everything else is beautiful.
I don't mind
except
the
story.
fox.
The fox is weird.
I like the story.
You like the story? Well, the story is bad.
I don't think so.
And
well,
even the director agrees.
Okay, some parts of it are bad.
It's bad. So, this movie is about the Green Knight, which is the ancient? Could you call it ancient? The old Arthurian tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Okay, so when I first introduced to this story, I thought...
When did you first watch this movie?
When it came out.
When was that? Like 2021?
Yeah. I didn't see it in theaters, I just watched it online somewhere. And I first introduced to the story. They kept calling him Garwin in the movie. So I thought his name was Garwin. Like, in the movie, they call him Garwin, which is wrong. And I don't know if it was, like, some of their accents or something, but I thought his name was Garwin.
It was the choice of the guy who played Arthur, and the director, this was in one of the articles I sent you, the director distrusted this guy so much that he was like, well, I know he probably researched this, so I'm going to let him call him Garwin, and then he just kept it.
Literally in every translation, his name is Gawain.
It's either, in every translation, it's either Gawain or Gawain.
Yeah.
Scholars argue over it.
And they kept calling him Garwin with an R. And that's what I thought his name was, until I got the book. And I got the book and started reading the poem, and I was, like, looking at his name, and I was like, yes, Garwin. And then I started, like, really looking at his name, and I was like, wait, his name isn't Garwin. There's no R.
His name is not Garwin, it's
in
Gawain.
his name. And I was so disappointed because I like the name Garwin, and Gawain is kind of dumb, but...
Well, it's a very Welsh name, isn't it?
Yeah. But I
don't know where my Welsh notebook is. I'm very distressed right now. I cannot find it.
But I really like this story. One of my favorite mythologies is Arthurian mythologies, because they're just... I love knights and medieval themes and stuff like that. Basically, I chose this movie. I just realized that I haven't described what my type of movies are.
Yeah, you should do that.
So,
they're like pretty green movies.
Pretty green movies? Wait, they are.
Yeah, the movies you like are green.
Wait, they are!
Yeah.
Except the last two. The last two we're watching, the double feature, they're red movies.
Oh, damn.
This is my movie month, where I picked a bunch of movies that fall under a genre, multiple genres, that I really enjoy, really like. And I like movies more for their vibes than for the story, kind of.
You don't watch a movie for the plot.
When I listen to music, I listen for the music and not for the lyrics. And so, That's what I kind of do with movies as well. Is like, if I like the vibe, I like the movie. It doesn't really matter.
I found my notebook. It was hiding from me. It was in a hiding spot that I didn't know I put it.
Interesting.
We're very different because I watch movies for the plot and I watch songs. I watch songs for the lyrics, and I think that's a major difference between the two of us.
Yeah, we're either polar opposites or exactly the same. There's no in between.
No in between.
And this movie, The Green Knight, qualifies under I like it for the vibes and not for the story, because this story isn't great. It's not accurate, and it's kind of bad. Not gonna lie, and even the director agrees with that. But the movies I like are artsy, plotless movies, where to the average movie viewer, these movies would be very boring and kind of slow to watch. But I love them. I love them so much because I don't know, they're always artsy and cool, and the vibes are amazing, and the colors are so cool.
Okay, I had an entire lecture when I was studying in Wales on medieval Wales, so you're gonna love this. I'm so prepared for this podcast, not because I like the movie, but because I like Welsh.
Okay.
Continue.
The other genre I like is romance movies, but where the couple doesn't end up together in the end. Which is like what people hate about romance movies, but I love them. I love them so much. I don't know why. I just prefer them over every other romance movie.
You're not a hopeless romantic. You're like you know how a hopeless romantic wants to be romantic and is hopeless about it? You're like the opposite. Like, you're hopeless. Like, you have a hopeless perspective, but not in a hopeless romantic way.
Yeah, like, they shouldn't be
You're
together.
You're just hopeless.
Like, they shouldn't be together, they should never be together, and they aren't ever gonna be together, because they shouldn't be. They're just, like, two different people, and they just aren't compatible like that. And those are the movies I like. I also like fantasy films, but like artsy fantasy films, so The Green Knight, and the other movie. I don't know. But that's kind of my genre. My genre is movies that an average person would think would be boring, and romance movies that the couple doesn't end up together in the end. Those are my favorite movies. And
I like Wales.
I have so many of them to watch. Next year we're watching really fucked up movies, and I'm excited for that. More fucked up than the ones that we're watching this year. Which is, my movies are also my favorite genre of movies is like movies that are fucked up. So like really any A24 film, all A24 films are fucked up.
Dude,
I love fucked up
A24 films are so good.
This was an A24 film.
I know.
And it was
oh my god.
Fantastic. Except
why
for the
are they
story.
all so good?
I don't know. But brief plot of The Green Knight, the movie, specifically the movie plot. It's
and then I'm gonna talk about Wales.
Basically, the Green Knight is this like druid tree creature knight who comes riding in on a white horse, and he rides in on Christmas to King Arthur's castle, and is like, I challenge one of you knights at the round table, or King Arthur himself, to come slash me in any way that you want, and a year from now I will hit you back in the same exact way. And so none of the knights took up the offer, and King Arthur was like, I'm too old for this. And so Sir Gawain in the back, who is King Arthur's nephew, who's Morgana's son, he stood up and was like, I'll do it. And everyone's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And then he goes up there, and King Arthur gives him Excalibur to hit him with, and Gawain takes Excalibur and chops off the Green Knight's head. And everyone's like, why did you do that? And Gawain's like, yeah, I killed him, so I don't have to do... Like, I feel like this was his thought process. His thought process was, I can decapitate him so he's dead, so he can't, like, fuck me up a year later. But the Green Knight gets up, Headless Horseman style, picks up his head and is like, see you in a year, and then rides away. And I feel like this is, like, where the Headless Horseman came from, like, from the story, which is interesting. And he rides away, and Wayne's like, fuck, I fucked up. I'm so dead. I'm fucked. And everyone applauds him because you're like, wow, that was a swing you took there. Good, that was very honorable. Very good for you. You're definitely gonna die next year. And so they essentially wait a year, and he sets off on his journey, and he's given a sword. No, he's given the axe that the Green Knight left. And he's given a shield with a bunch of symbols on it. And he's given this sash, this magical sash that his mom blessed to make him essentially invincible. He can't be physically injured at all. Or no, he can't be killed. I guess he can be physically injured. He can't be killed with the green sash around his waist. And so he sets off on his journey, and he comes across this little bitch, Barry Keoghan, who is like, hey, let me help you find where you go. And Wayne's like, I'm going to the Green Chapel, or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, it's this way. And then the little bitch ambushes him with his two little buddies. And he gets ambushed, and he gets tied up, and he is like sitting there for a night, and the little bitch steals all his stuff, and Gawain eventually gets untied and picks up what's left, which is like the axe, his cape, and I think that's it. And he starts wandering off because now he's lost. And so he starts wandering off, and he's like completely lost. And so he goes in this cave and just like tries to survive, and he comes across a little fox friend, and the little fox friend is like kind of a guide and kind of represents his consciousness, but it's also his mother like watching over him also. And this fox follows him around. Gawain ends up eating these random mushrooms in a cave, ends up going on a little acid trip for a while, sees these giant people walking around. They start howling like a fox, and he ends up falling off a cliff. And then he wakes up in this, like, manor? This, like, giant house.
Damn right he does.
And this couple lives in this house. And, what?
Wait, you forgot about the lady without the head.
Oh, I forgot about the lady without the head.
Oh my god, I was like, you skipped a section. You fast forwarded.
I forgot about her. I forgot about her.
That's so important. So that part is not in the original poem, because this movie's based off of a poem, right? Did you talk about that? Did you talk about?
I mean, it's implied.
Okay, so this movie is based off of a poem that was written. Well, it's not just implied; it's really important, like historically, right? This was a poem that was written anonymously around the time that all of the other Arthurian legends were written down. But something really cool about this is this was a really skilled poet, because this poem was written in the time period that poetry. So poetry in this era did not revolve really around rhymes. It more so revolved around how the sounds work. So this was written in Old English, right? So there was a lot of alliteration, especially during this time period. They like really amped up the alliteration, but actually the alliteration was like twice as much in this poem as it would have been in like other poems written during this time period. Like this anonymous author doubled the use of alliteration. And not only that, but the alliteration had a sound effect in the poem. So if it was read aloud, like you would hear like the thwip of an arrow going past you, or like a bam of an arrow hitting something, in the way that the words were used in the poem. So reading the poem in English doesn't even do it justice to the sound effects that it had when read aloud in Old English, which is really, really cool. But we are about to talk about the lady without the head. And the lady without the head, as well as the scavengers, were not in the original poem. The original poem was just like, he left to go see the Green Knight, and then it skips to the couple in the castle, right? So these things were added in by the director to like allude to other movies that came out, but a specific, and the lady without a head has a certain metaphorical. I'm so high right now, I can't believe I'm talking so well. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I am never this coherent. The lady with the head has a certain metaphorical, symbolic aspect in the movie because of the fact that the whole movie is about Gawain losing his head, right? Like, he cuts off the guy's head, and the guy's gonna cut off his head, and then it's like, oh no, he doesn't cut off his head, but then he does, and yeah, it's a whole thing, right? So then that, like, ties in symbolically to the movie, whatever. But a really cool part is based off of a town name that is in the original poem. Even though it doesn't really talk about his journey, we know that he traveled through this specific town that was in Wales, and that town in Wales has this legend of this woman who was like married to a guy, but she was like, no, I want to go be a nun, and the guy was like, no, you can't be a nun, and cut off her head. And then she like came back as a ghost, and someone else found her head in this well, and there's this well in the town, so that then it's like that's like potentially where in the movie he was going to look for the head. So like the author took this name of a town that's in the poem and was like, he crossed through here, and then took this woman with a story without a head that's like from the town, and then connected it to the movie, which makes sense with the symbols because of the losing of the heads. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Carry on.
So that, when he visits that happens before he gets high in the cave. It's like after he gets kidnapped by the scavengers and before the mushrooms. So at this point, when he's at the house, he meets this ghost, the spirit, who's like, get my head from the lake, and he dives in the lake and grabs her head and gives it back. She's like, thank you, and then he leaves. At the manor with the couple, in the movie, the man is like, I go out hunting every day, and everything that I hunt, I'm giving to you. Everything that the forest gives me, I'm giving it to you. And the first day he brings that back a boar, and he's like, this is for you. And then on the second day, he's like, whatever you receive in this house, you have to give to me. And he's like, Gawain's like, what am I gonna receive in this house? And his wife, the guy's wife, is like trying to seduce Gawain. She like kisses him, and there's this very explicit scene in the film where she gives him a little hand job, and they show the aftermath, which is honestly nothing I've ever seen before, which is a very interesting choice for the director. And then there's also this blind woman who I think is the lady's mom, and she's blind, and she kind of feels like a seer. Like, you know those people that, like, see the future and, like, tell prophecies and stuff? She kind of reminds me of one of those. Also, the lady of the house, she was kind of giving, like, Bene Gesserit vibes from Dune. But in the house, she gives Gawain a book and takes his portrait, and she takes his portrait through essentially photography instead of painting it. And she does it with, like, a little, I forget what it's called, but it's basically like a little spotlight through a window, and then she projects it onto, like, metal, like a tintype photo. And it's printed, like, upside down on a sheet of metal, and he's like, that's a very queer painting. And
gay.
That's, like, one of the first... She eventually, I guess, she was also, like, very smart, because she had, like, what's the science for space? Not astrology,
Astrological science?
No, what's the space
Astronomy.
science? No.
Astronomy?
Yes, astronomy.
Astronomical.
She's like studying astronomy and stuff, so she's like really, really smart. And she probably invented that,
she also has a whole
photography.
sex worker scheme going on with her husband to coerce strangers into, which is quite fun.
Yeah, and so, she eventually gives him a hand job. That was really weird, and he runs away, and he runs into
but wait, after the hand job, you find out that that old woman in the Band-Aids was watching.
Oh yeah, the old woman was in the room, but she's blind. She was just sitting there, and he runs away. Is that important?
Yes, it is.
Why?
Because you find out that the old woman in the Band-Aids is his mom, which is weird that his mom's watching him have sex.
When is that appeared in the movie?
Well, I don't know if the movie makes it explicit, but so okay, basically, in the movie,
I know it's in the poem, but it's like
in the movie, his mom is the
fox.
the witch. The mom is the fox and the witch lady. Like you know how Arthur has like a witch half sister and a normal half sister.
Yeah, Morgana.
Yeah, so in the movie, they make his mom the witch half sister, who is then also all the other characters. And in the poem, his mom is the normal half sister, but the witch half sister is still the one doing all the spooky shit. And the poem very much establishes that the spooky half sister is the Green Knight and the Band-Aid lady. So it's kind of it's just weird that yeah, and it's actually really fun because the director said that he made the spooky half sister the mom as well because he wanted to write about his relationship with his own mom, and he was like, my relationship with my mom is messy, so that's why I made her the mom and a good guy and a bad guy in this movie. And I think that's really funny that his mom watched him get a hand job.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
And so after that, he runs away, and he meets the husband in the forest, and he's like, where are you going? Like, we still have a couple days left. And he's like, no, I have to go. I have to leave right now. And the husband's like, well, you still haven't given me what you received in the house. And Gawain's like, I'm not giving you anything. I'm not giving you shit, because what she just gave me, I'm not giving you. And, he's like, I'll give you something then. And then he kisses him, which, gay. And then he's like, well, I found this in the forest. And then he throws the fox that he caught down because when Gawain passed out, he lost the fox. And so the fox found him again. He yells at the fox and like tells him to run away because the fox speaks in his mother's voice and is like, come home, like, please come home, I want to save you. And Gawain's like, no, fuck you. And he goes and finds the Green Knight. And he goes to the Green Knight, and I love the green chapel or whatever. I love what it looks like. I love everything about it. I actually painted one of the scenes from the Green Chapel, and it was like the frame where Gawain's like sitting in front at the foot of the Green Knight's throne. That was like my computer screensaver for like ever.
I was gonna say the Green Knight being called the Green Knight but not being green physically like he is in the poem is really interesting in the movie, like as a symbolism, because they make him like a tree, which is still green, but it's not green like the color, it's green like vibes.
I love that they made him like a druid tree creature. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
The Green Knight in like the canon Green Knight is disgusting. Like he's like neon piss green, everything is green. His skin, his face, his clothes,
it takes on
his
like
horse,
an environmental
his blood.
aspect. And it's really cool because the original poem is called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, but the movie is just called The Green Knight, which kind of gives it like a double meaning between the actual bad guy, the Green Knight, and then it's like the movie changes it from the poem so that Sir Gawain is not yet a knight. In the poem, he's already a knight, but in the movie, it's like he wants to prove himself so he can become like a real knight, you know? So it's like he's a green as a new knight, which is kind of cool. And the reason that the director changed that from the poem is because he wanted to give Gawain like an external reason to want to go on this quest, because the poem only gives him like internal motivators. It's like, oh, I want to prove that I'm like an honest, good person, and he has that in the movie too, but then the director just wanted to give him like an extra external motivating factor of like, I have to become a knight. So that's a cool change, and then it has the double meaning, and then they made him a tree, and then it's like environment, woohoo. Okay, carry on. Chapel.
So, Chapel, you say? Chapel Roan? So he is chilling in front of the Green Knight because he got there early. He sits there for about a day, and then the Green Knight wakes up, and he's like, you're here. Good man. Are you ready to get your head chopped off? Gawain is like, honestly, this is probably the realest depicted fear that I've seen so far ever in like a fantasy film. Because like I could feel his fear of dying, which is like something I've never seen in a fantasy film before. Like it just never seemed real until like in this movie. So applaud Dev Patel for sure. Good job on that. But he basically kneels down and he's so afraid, he's shaking, he's like falling over, and the Green Knight is like, stand up, sit, like kneel and stand up straight and be ready to get your head chopped off. And Gawain's like, okay. The Green Knight swings at him and Gawain basically dodges it and he's like, no, I can't do this. And then he runs away. And he goes back home and he is like applauded by everyone and he becomes king eventually. It kind of like time fast forwards in this part where he eventually becomes king, and he then gets like married for political reasons, has a son with his old lover, but like ditches his old lover and just keeps the son, and has a queen for political reasons. And then there's a war in the kingdom, and right before they're about to like break into the throne room and kill him, he takes off his sash that gives him invincibility and his head falls off. See, in the cut of the movie that I watched today, that's where it ended. Is that where it ended for you?
No, there's supposed to be a scene where a little girl like comes up and finds the crown off his head, which ties back to the beginning of the movie. That's actually what I want to ask you about. You know the very beginning of the movie before he gets woken up on Christmas morning and it's like really fucking creepy? I feel like that ties to the very last scene with the little girl, but I don't understand.
No, but then he's supposed to like wake up in the Green Chapel and then get his head cut off. Like the first original version that I watched back in 2021, it cuts back after that to the Green Chapel and he gets his head. He's like, okay, I'm ready. And he takes the sash off and he gets his head cut off, like for real.
Oh, no, yeah, it's supposed to be like he actually, this was all like a vision and then the guy cut his head off for real.
Yeah.
And then a little girl like picks it up.
A little girl? I don't remember a little girl.
Yeah, so the whole thing with like him being a bad king and his head falls off is like a little vision, but it's not actually what happened.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm ready, and then he lets the guy. This guy looks like Groot. He does. He
looks like Groot's uncle.
Yeah, literally. And that's not in the poem. That's not how the poem ends. The poem ends with him running away and then living happily ever after.
Yeah.
But the director wanted to change it to like show morals.
Can I read you how the director feels about this movie? So I have the book that came out alongside the movie that's like just another translation of the poem by this guy Bernard O'Donoghue, but David Lowery, the director of this movie, also the writer, wrote the foreword, and I just want to read the first paragraph just to show you guys how he feels about this movie. And he talks for about 3 pages about how he discovered the Green Knight, the story, and how he wanted to adapt it into a film, and how like advice that he wished he had when he was writing this, because he actually hates this film. He hated how it turned out. He hates everything about it, and he wished he waited at least a couple more years before even attempting to write it. Like even he thinks it's bad.
Wait,
so,
what does he hate about it?
Everything. The way he wrote it, everything. Like the way he decided to write the story and change it.
I sent you the video of the credit scene with the little girl, but it's like she comes in and picks up his crown, and I feel like that's related to the first scene of the movie because the crown's on like fire, and I don't really understand.
Okay.
I put in general.
Okay. 1 second.
But I think he's giving himself a hard time. I think the movie's shot very beautifully.
Yeah, but it's the story. It's the story that he hates.
The story isn't bad. The story has some problems, but in general, I think he did a really good job of doing justice to the original poem while making it a screen adaptation by taking in other historical details from the time.
I want to read the first paragraph of this foreword. So, David Lowery says, "What was I thinking when I wrote this? I knew what I was getting myself into when I wrote that line. At one point, even omitted it from the screenplay for the fear that it was simply too brazen. But some brew of hubris and humor compelled me to restore it, and now it's there, in the final cut, an hour and change into the movie. A permanent reminder to myself, when adapting a work like this one you now hold in your hands, improvement is simply not possible. The best one can hope for is a glimmer of a reflection of the original that in the best cases might drive readers back to the source to discover everything you merely scratched the surface of." With this movie, I think he was basically trying to make it better than the actual story itself, which he says he failed at, like, horribly. And he hates how this movie turned out.
I found a theory about the end of the movie. Dude. You know the entire part that you didn't get to watch at the end?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it.
The actual ending and then the credit scene? Both of those. So, this comment theorizes that since the Green Knight ends the movie by saying "off with your head," that it's like a pun, and it's not actually off with your head, but it's like off you go with your head still attached to you. And then, instead of having so like he goes and lives his life with the lessons he learned because he passed the test that the Green Knight was giving him by bravely facing his death. And then in the future, instead of having a son like his vision, he had a daughter, and that's the end credit scene is the daughter playing with his crown. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. I watched the like 4-minute TED Talk episode explaining the Green Knight story, and they said that the story is basically between Morgana and the guy at the manor, so the husband at the manor. And it's basically Morgana and the guy at the manor plan this whole thing. And Morgana like sets him off on the adventure, and the Green Knight is the guy in the manor. He, like, takes off his helmet or whatever at the end, right before he's about to chop Gawain's head off. And he's like, "Haha, surprise! It's me!" And Gawain's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, me and Morgana planned this whole thing." And Gawain's like, "What?" And he's like, he, like, scratched the back of his neck. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna kill you because you were honest with me." And he's like, "But I wasn't." And then he, like, pulls out the sash and, like, gives it to him or something. And he's like, "Oh." And then he, like, is set free, and then he goes off on his way in a happily ever after. And that was the way that TED Talk gave it to me, but I don't think that's what it was at all.
I don't know. This is like, this whole movie's very up to interpretation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but when I was watching this movie, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before. But the first time I watched this, I was like, "Oh yes, the Green Knight and Morgana, blah blah blah." And then this time, I realized that Morgana called the Green Knight. Like, she's the one who wrote the letter that the Green Knight gives King Arthur. You can see it when she's doing her little incantation. She wrote the letter, and then she set it on fire, and that was calling and summoning the Green Knight, and the Green Knight shows up, like, immediately after that. And he walks in, hands that letter that Morgana wrote, King Arthur. Guinevere reads it, and is, like, possessed by his voice, which is Morgana's doing, obviously, because she's a witch, and she's the fox, she's the blind lady, and she's the Green Knight. And I feel like this entire movie is just her testing her son or something, or just like...
See, that's one of my biggest confusions with the movie, is I didn't understand, because the director changed the poem and made it so the mom is also the bad guy, that, like, why would she do this thing that's, like, going to kill him? So, like, why did she cast the spell when she also was trying to help him with the little sash?
I don't know. I feel like she was just fucking with him. I feel like she wanted him to be a knight, but he was never given that opportunity yet, and so she made this opportunity for him, and then he kind of, like, fucked it by chopping the Green Knight's head off, and so she was like, "Fuck, well now I gotta, like, save him." So she gives him the sash. I'm guessing she was talking with the couple at the manor because she's the old lady. So, like, she was attached to everything that was happening. And then he still dies at the end, which doesn't happen in the original story. So I feel like this was a test for him to become a knight, but then he just fucks it.
Unless you go with that theory that the knight lets him live at the end.
Yeah. But in the movie, he
Actually,
does cut off his head.
Well, we don't see him cut off his head, so it's just implied.
I feel like he probably did die because then the whole vision thing.
But there's also the theory that he died, like, the very first time he saw his own, like, corpse in the movie, when, like, after he got robbed by Barry.
Yeah.
Which, I saw him in this movie, and I was like, he's just a little guy, but he's also, like, a fully grown adult, and it was weird.
If I was presented with this challenge, I would definitely have just, like, cut off his pinky or something. But it wouldn't have been as honorable. So, like, they would have been disappointed in me, but, like, what would I chop off? What would be honorable enough to chop off, but not enough to die, or, like, or just, like, be super inconvenient to not have?
I think you can get a pretty nice prosthetic leg if you, like, chopped off below
But, like,
your
in
knee.
the medieval ages, he would die.
In the medieval ages? I mean, you got, like, How to Train Your Dragon, and Hiccup's got that little peg leg, and he's doing great.
That's fantasy. This is real life.
Ah, you're so mean to me.
Think realistically. I think
a hand?
if I was...
An ear? An ear.
An ear? Would that be honorable?
I think so.
Would you be praised for that? Would you become a knight for chopping off an ear?
It feels like something that would happen. What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like if I was there, like me, myself, I would see if the Green Knight had a dick and chop off his dick. And I'd be like, you can't chop off my dick. I don't have that.
That would be really smart.
And that would be honorable. That'd be like, yeah, you chopped off his dick. That's pretty fucking honorable.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Oh, you're winning. So
I'm like, I'm a lady. I don't have one of those.
If you were there, it's like, why did Gawain go for the head? Isn't that kind of stupid? Because he could have just chopped off something else.
I understand why he went for the head. It's because he thought he could kill him and not hold up the other end of the bargain, so he wouldn't have to die.
Oh. I was wondering why he went for the head. I was like, that doesn't really make sense given the rules you were given, but I see now.
Yeah. I'm like, I understand why he did that.
It seemed like people were telling him not to go to, like, the second year and, like, get the payback. And it's like people were trying to convince him not to go, and he was like, no, I have to go. It's honorable. So does that mean he, like, actually had the choice? Like, he could have just been like, no, I'm not doing it. And then, like, nothing would have happened.
I feel like the Green Knight would have found him and...
That's what I'm thinking.
Killed him.
Like, it felt so magical that, like, he had to go, but all the people in his life were acting like he had the option to go. And I was like, really? He made this deal and just doesn't have to hold it up if he doesn't want to?
I mean, it wouldn't have been honorable and he would have not become a knight.
Well,
like,
yeah,
just,
but
like,
I just think it's crazy that he had the option.
I mean, yeah.
That's just wild to me. It felt like it was a mandatory thing, but he really just could have been like, no, I'm not doing it. That's so crazy.
I mean, the Green Knight would have found him. Like, it was his mom.
Yeah, that's what I imagined, but the movie doesn't make... Oh yeah, that's true. If it's his mom, he just comes.
I love when Barry Keoghan says, when he's, like, hopping out of the woods, when he's, like, kidnapped, he's like, twarn't enough. Twarn't enough. And he says twarn't. I'm like, what the fuck even is that word? But I fucking love the way he says twarn't. I also...
Yeah, he was just talking in Old English and it felt so awkward and I loved it.
I also love the way that Gawain's lover says lady. She says it in her accent, but she's like, lady. And I love it. It's so beautiful.
Fun fact about this movie, and also just like Arthur times in general, they're always depicted as having castles, and also it's roughly believed that these people lived around the year 600. However, the movie even makes this clear that they are in Britain, and they're fighting against the Anglo-Saxons. Britons were Welsh people. Britain was Wales up until the 1700s, and then Britain became known as the Isle of Great Britain, and it's the whole island with Scotland and England as well. But up until the 1700s, Britain referred to Wales, and Welsh people were called Britons. And they were fighting against the Anglo-Saxons, which were the English. Like, the movie even says, like, oh, the Saxons. Right? You with me so far?
Can you establish what you're talking about?
I'm talking about castles. Anyway, so if the Britons are fighting in Wales, where they are fighting against the Anglo-Saxons, which are the English, that means that the northern France people, referred to as the Normans, did not conquer England yet, because that happened in the year 1066. And after England was conquered by the Normans, then in 1072 is when William the Conqueror had a partial conquest of Wales, and that's when castles were introduced to Wales. The Normans from France conquered England, built castles, conquered Wales, built castles, right? So that's where castles came from, but that wasn't until the year 1072, and if this takes place in the year 600, there should be no castles. I just wanted to share that the castle was wrong. I'm gonna read the poem just for us to make a movie about it.
You want to borrow one of my books? I have 2 translations.
Yes, please.
One from the 70s and one from 2021. That's a pretty...
Oh my god.
Pretty different from each other.
Dude.
Something I found in my notes. Another quote that I liked is when Wayne was talking to the spirit lady in the house. He like goes to touch her, and it's like big and mysterious, and the music's building up, and then he like is about to touch her, and the music stops, and she's like, "What are you doing? Don't do that. Don't touch me. You know better than that." And that's really funny. Also, when he like brings the head back and he drops the head, she says, "The Green Knight is someone you know." And so that also proves and connects that Morgana is the Green Knight.
Yes.
Which I didn't catch the first time I watched
Me neither,
the movie.
but you're so correct. You are the most correct anyone has ever been, especially you.
Okay. Also, the thing that is... So, the themes of the story, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, is like friendship, generosity, truth, chastity, and like chivalry. But the scene where he receives a hand job breaks one of those pillars. So, the story sucks.
Yeah.
Watching this movie today, I didn't even really watch the movie. I mean, I was super distracted while watching it. I did watch it, but like, I was really distracted while watching it. But when I was watching it, I like fully understood this movie now. Like, when I first watched it, probably the first like 2 times I've watched it, I was like, oh yes, it's the knight that goes on a journey to get killed and blah blah blah. He's just like, yes, a knight's journey. But now I watched it and I'm like, it's all Morgana. Like, everyone is Morgana. Like, Morgana,
Isn't
it's
that
Morgana.
crazy?
Like, I never noticed that in all the times that I've watched this movie.
My problem with this movie is the story's really interesting as a concept, and the movie's shot very beautifully, and despite these 2 things that you think would make a good movie, it does bore me a little bit.
Exactly. And that's my type of movie.
Yeah.
It is a little bit boring, especially like in the period after he gets scavenged and right up before the manor. Like, in that between time is so boring. The movie really isn't interesting until the end, when he gets to the manor. Like, the beginning is interesting when he meets the Green Knight.
Even at the beginning, they spend way too much time small talking.
Yeah, it's like when he meets the Green Knight, that's interesting, and then when he's getting ready to leave, that's kind of interesting just to see him like get all his equipment on, and then it's pretty boring up until the manor. The manor's kind of interesting, but it's also more waiting.
Because there's sex.
There's just like so much. No, not even that. It's just like I liked her library and the photograph, and
oh my god, I loved him being like, "There's so many books." How?
Yeah, he's like, I didn't know there's this many books in the whole world. Just like, I've read every single one of them. I've actually written most of these. Which is really cool.
I'm out of thoughts for the movie.
We've been talking for an hour. Can you believe that?
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that so wild?
That is. What are your overall thoughts of the movie?
I think the movie was pretty, and I love the story as a concept that could potentially exist.
Yeah, that we're
but
gonna
it
make.
didn't, somehow
in
it
20
didn't
years.
execute properly. So we're gonna fix it and make it better.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be so good, and we're gonna win an Oscar.
Yeah, and David Lowery, you can produce it. You can help us produce it because you know what you kind of knew what you were doing, but we're gonna make it better.
Like, bro was cooking but had the wrong ingredients. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly. You put it in perfect words, man. Perfect words.
Thank you.
I love this movie. I love the colors and the costumes and the set. Everything except for the story. I love the soundtrack. I actually have the soundtrack, like, downloaded on my phone.
But the story is good. I just don't know what went wrong and why it wasn't as fun as it should have been. I feel like A Little Night Journey should be fun, and it wasn't.
Oh, oh my god, I think this might solve it, but I wrote this thing down where I said this whole movie has this horrific aura where I'm always in fight or flight mode, as if I'm like waiting for a jump scare, and that was like me watching this entire movie. I was just like, felt like I was waiting something, and the music was really doing that for me, but like nothing happened. And so it was kind of just like, it was a little disappointing.
Yeah, it's too much suspense for something that doesn't deliver, and that's a problem because it's such a good story.
Yeah.
And he just dropped the ball a little bit. He was given such a really nice ball and he dropped it, but he did his best.
Do you know what? Do you know what Palme Soit Malpence means?
No?
Me neither. Probably old
I
English.
can say the longest town name in Wales.
Oh yeah, that one place.
Yeah. Slanfire plus Gwingles go the other swinge son of Sean Cecilio go go go. You wanna try?
That wasn't. You just said gibberish.
No, it's here. Let me show you.
I want you to listen
It even has
back
a song.
to that moment.
Sunfire
I
plus
want you to-
Gwingil go the swin son Cecilio go go go. It's a whole song. There, I put it in general. Try reading that. That's the town name. It means like it's like the church by the water next to the red roof with the St. Mary's Church, and it actually has 4 L's in a row, because it's Drobels Slan Ticilio. So Slanfire plus Gwingo go get swin Drobels Slan Ticilio go go go, and then the Drobels and the Slan like is 4 L's in a row, which is really cool.
If you guys stay with us for the next 20 years, maybe you'll see this movie once more.
We're gonna be 40.
Who's your favorite character?
My favorite character was Gawain, because he was this little chivalrous guy, and I also liked the guy at the manor who wanted sex and hunting, because he was
Yeah, he's a vibe.
He has a vibe that was one of the funnest things that was on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really my problem with the movie, is it just wasn't fun and it should have been.
Yeah. I like.
Too aesthetic.
I like Wayne because Dev Patel. Dev Patel
Yeah.
falls under like my one very specific type of man that I like. Like, there's only one very specific type of man that I would find attractive, and Dev Patel falls under it. Specifically him in this movie.
Well, you like 40-year-old men with mustaches.
No, I don't find them attractive. I just like watching them. I find them entertaining. They're like my little jesters.
That's kind of what he was like in this movie.
Him in this movie I find attractive. Like, he's...
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine Gawain as a white man. I just literally can't because of Dev Patel. Like, I was looking up the story earlier, and I kept seeing pictures of him as a white man, like as a white blonde boy, and I was like, absolutely
No, I
fucking
hate
not.
that he probably would have been white
Yeah, me
in
too.
real life because it's so much better with Dev
It's so
Patel.
much hell. He's so hot. I can't imagine him being white. It's just scary. And like when I picture Gawain, I'm like, Dev Patel is Gawain, and I love him, and that's why he's my favorite knight, because of Dev Patel. Thank you, Dev Patel, for bestowing this upon us. I love you. What would you rate this movie?
You see, all the vibes get a 5 out of 5. Like, the vibes the movie has in my soul gets 5 stars. But the actual movie only gets, like, a 3.75. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, that's actually exactly what I was gonna say. Like, exactly.
Dude, you are on my level.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Oh my god, I found out, wait,
me.
I found out what that sentence means. It means, shame to him who finds evil here. In this 1970s translation, there's a lot of relation to Rome. Like, they talk about Brutus and Troy and the gods. Also, in the introduction of this 1970s translation is 40 pages long. It's 40 pages. This is the longest introduction I've ever seen in my entire life. And it basically explains the origin of the story and the author and, like, the different translations and how they changed the story based on how they are translated. It was, like, the longest thing I've ever read in my entire life. And it took me days to get through.
Thank you guys for listening. You should subscribe so you can keep seeing the movies that Soul picks out for this month. And if you enjoyed this, you can go watch.
One.
Oh no. If
I think you'll
this,
actually
you
like
go...
the next
You
one.
you should pick out Mustache Man movies for next year.
Oh, we'll have a Mustache Man movie this year.
Thank God. They're your weirdest
There's
ones.
a lot of mustache movies next year, though.
God. If you are enjoying this, you should subscribe because we post a podcast like this every week, and we have like 50 other episodes you can go watch. And we also play games and have a chill time. Thank you. Peace out. I feel like a podcaster right now.